Hello, welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance. Join our hosts as they discuss a wide range of topics and speak with leading cybersecurity, technology, and compliance experts. Now is the time for Secure Talk.
Hello everybody, welcome to Secure Talk. Secure Talk is brought to you by AdeQuest, your cybersecurity and compliance partner. My name is Mark Schreiner, and today I have a special guest. I have Justin White, who is a security professional and is also the ISSA Puget Sound chapter president. Justin, how are you today?
Doing well, thanks, Mark.
Hey, Justin. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join our show. Before we get started, I would like you to kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background in the security space.
Thank you. So, before I start talking about what I'm doing now, I kind of got to talk about where I started. And that's really led to where I am in my career. In 1982, I was about 9 years old, and my dad, who was an engineer, went and bought one of the Atari 2600s. And many people will remember that as kind of their first computing experience. I think I was about in the fourth grade or so. And it also came with a programming cartridge, which had BASIC on it, which I actually think was created by Microsoft, if I'm correct. And so I started out on that, and I was pretty much hooked right from the beginning. And then coincidentally, around the same time, Steve Jobs had been working with the California legislator, and in 1982 or 83, or probably about 83, 84, donated Apple computers to the school that I was going to. So every computer, or every classroom had a computer in it. And the first thing that happened was the teachers did not know how to use them. So they kind of just sat there in the corner of the classroom. And the teachers, they had never used computers before, and the kids had never used computers before. Well, I had the Atari 2600 and already had been learning how to set it up and, had mastered that and knew how to program in BASIC. So that I asked the teachers one day, what's the story with the computers? And they said, well, you know about computers. Would you help us set them up? So that was kind of my first computer job right there. I was actually responsible for setting up all the Apple I think there were 2E computers in every classroom, and then teaching the teachers how to use it.
That's awesome, and, man. I remember those days. I remember when computers first showed up at our high school, and you're right. Most of the teachers didn't really know what to do with them. We had several PCs, and I remember there was the one Mac, and everybody wanted to get on it, but nobody really knew what to do with it. So I definitely remember those days.
That is exactly how it was, Mark. And, you remember everybody huddling around it, trying to get time on it and stuff like that. And so, fast forward to today, I never really stopped working with computers. I had jobs in 7th and 8th grade working in healthcare, believe it or not. In high school, I worked for a defense contractor doing IT, data backup, and general, IT security. We didn't know it was IT security back then. It was just kind of one of the things that you did, and always had been in it. The one thing that I never knew was that it was going to be a career for me. I always thought of it as kind of a hobby, and it wasn't really until I got out on my own, moved out of my house, and realized, oh gosh, I got to make money, that it became a quote unquote career.
And did you go to university?
Yep.
Okay.
Went to school, and I got to tell you that back then, at least for me, when I went to computer science courses in college, it wasn't what I was expecting. Back then, they weren't really teaching what we learn today. If you go to get a computer science or cybersecurity degree, back then it was like, let's teach you accounting or how to use the computer to run a hotel or something. It wasn't quite what it was today, at least my experience. In fact, I got more coaching and more tutoring when I was in high school, in junior high, because I was getting lessons on how to program. And then in high school, I was in early college courses. So I was taking classes through UC Santa Barbara while I was still in high school. Then somehow when I went into actual college, they weren't teaching what I thought was real computer science.
So then how did you further your education? Was it just on the job or surrounding yourself with people who had similar interests, or how did that work?
Yeah, you hear all these funny stories, and one of the books that I've been reading lately is called Outliers, and it's not always practice; it's practice and kind of the stars aligning at the same time. But I got married and I moved away from Santa Barbara up to Seattle area, and lo and behold, I ended up moving next door to a gentleman who had his own IT and cybersecurity consulting company.
Hmm.
So I got to know this guy, but he hadn't shown me what he exactly did. And so one day, once he knew that I liked computers and was, addicted to computer science and stuff, he said, "Hey, come and check out my garage." Like, okay, let's go check out his garage. His whole garage was lined with server systems. It
Wow.
was almost like he had his own little data center, and he took me under his wing, and I started working with him, and that was it. We hit the Y2K thing, and we were real busy as consultants, and that was really where I got my feet wet, so to speak.
That's excellent. Yeah, I always tell my boys, if you want to be good at soccer, for example, then surround yourself with soccer players who are slightly better or much better than you. And same with music, and I guess the same is holds true for any job skills, and computer science being one of them.
I think that's a great point. And how do you do that with computer science? Well, you go to places like ISSA, or when you're working in an organization, you find a mentor that's doing what you're doing, or has more experience in what you're doing, and you kind of try to cling to them or glean as much information as you can. I think one thing for me, which was kind of lucky, is that I ended up working for an organization called Computerland.
Hmm.
And so I came in the door, and there were guys and gals that had been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. So I was thrown right in the middle of all these experts, and it was just wonderful.
That's excellent. And so tell me a little bit about your work now. We'll get into the ISA a little bit later, ISSA, but
Yeah, sure.
yeah, what type of projects do you work
Yeah.
on? And yeah.
So, I've been focusing on full-time consulting since about 2010 or 11. And so I'm still doing that now. And what I mainly focus on lately is risk, and working for a large healthcare organization, which I'm going to leave anonymous. But it's mainly focused on risk. So identifying one, what your critical assets are, kind of where the keys to the kingdom are, and what new technology they want to adopt, or what new medical devices they want to adopt. And you kind of look at it from some of the standard risk methodologies that are out there in the world, but also a holistic way of, don't assume anything, trust but verify, go over everything with a fine tooth comb, look for flaws, look for vulnerabilities, look for risk, and how data is exchanged or used by the vendor. And even look at the devices that are sent by the vendor to see how the vendor develops them, whether they're developed securely or not. So that's been my primary focus right now.
Well, that sounds a little bit broader than just cybersecurity. I mean, you're looking enterprise wide at potential risk issues. How did you prepare or move into that role from working, mostly on computers, computer security, and now, dealing with risk issues, which really is not just technology; it's processes and mapping out, like you said, critical assets, etc. How did you prepare for that?
Yeah, for me at least, I just think about my personal life. I think some of it's a maturing process, because early on, I was focused just on the technology, and all the gadgets and the routers and the switches and firewall and intrusion detection and all that stuff. So you really heads down, kind of in the weeds. And it wasn't until I had a little exposure with more of the business and the processes, like you mentioned, that I started to go, So this whole time I've been thinking about these gadgets and, if you will, the zeros and ones of things, but really I should also be focusing on how all this applies to the business, like what I'm actually doing or how it applies to the customer. And, just as a little tidbit, the kind of story that hits me in my mind is when I put in a request to purchase this very expensive piece of security monitoring equipment, which would monitor traffic. And the CEO of the company actually came down to talk to me about a week later. I get this tap on the shoulder and scared me because this is kind of a guy that, was helping run the company. And I was just a little bit fearful, I think. And he said, "Justin, what's this thing that you've asked for here?" And I start talking kind of geek talk. Well, this thing will monitor this. And he starts waving his hands in my face. He goes, stop. I don't understand what you're saying anyway. Just tell me how it applies to patient care. And He said, when you can tell me that, then we'll talk.
Wow. That's a pretty good lesson right there. I mean, because, most people at that level, they can't go into the weeds and they don't want to go into the weeds. They just want to know, how is this going to affect us? And if you bring that mindset to your job in terms of, okay, what am I doing? How does what I do affect the organization? It probably lets you see things in a different manner as well.
It does, because I think especially when you're in like the intrusion detection team or you're on the firewall team or whatever it is that you're doing, if you get so focused on what the tool is and you get kind of, you get the blinders on your head of I have my tool or I have my role and this is what I do. And you don't get a lot of exposure to executives or to business decision makers at the company. But once you have to write a business justification and you start to have responsibilities for a budget, then you start to see that. And eventually that happened partially because I, earned more responsibility in an organization or I applied for a role. It's once you get into like the CISO levels or IT security manager levels that you really start to have to learn that, how to speak with business leaders in the organization, how to justify spending and that kind of thing, that you kind of learn it.
I think that's a really good point. Well, I mean, one of the things I really like about you and respect about you is that you also make a very strong effort to give something back to the community. And I'm speaking specifically about your role at the ISSA. Maybe you could take a little bit, describe the ISSA, and then we can talk about the Puget Sound chapter, which you're the president of. And you do, in my opinion, a tremendous job of leading that organization. But let's, for our listeners' sake, who might not be familiar with the ISSA, can you just tell us a little bit about the organization and then what you do here in Puget Sound?
Yeah, thank you. So the Information Systems Security Association, or is more commonly known ISSA, is an international organization. There's chapters all over the globe: Egypt, India, you name it. They're everywhere. And then they're in every town as well, or every major city. There's about 10,000 members worldwide in this organization now. And really where the bread and butter is at the local organization. The way that I got involved was when I was in Colorado working for Governor Bill Ritter. We had this annual conference that we partnered with ISSA. And that's kind of how I got to know ISSA. At the time, I was working long hours, didn't have the time to get involved, but always wanted to. And it wasn't until I came back to the Seattle area that I was able to contribute and get involved. But a wonderful organization. It's really focused on educating people, mentoring people, getting in touch with the next generation of up-and-comers, and it's just a wonderful organization.
I would agree, and the activities for the Puget Sound chapter for me are really beneficial. I just started going maybe 6 months ago. I'm relatively new to the security space. I'm always looking to learn, to network, to meet people. But the Puget Sound chapter is, every meeting you have anywhere from 50 to 70, sometimes maybe even 80 people, a variety of very high quality speakers. and the presentations are always informational at a variety of levels. I mean, for somebody like me who's new to the industry, I'm learning something. But I think even for some of the more seasoned professionals, I can tell by the interaction, the questions, that everybody's learning and everybody's sharing. Additionally, I always like what you do in terms of connecting job seekers with people who are recruiting. And so, I mean, you really make that 2-hour meeting. Is it the third Thursday of the month? Is it fixed? What is the meeting dates? How does that work?
It's the third Thursday of every month.
Yeah, the third,
except for November and December.
Okay, the third Thursday of every month, and it's a couple hours, and then there's an after meeting kind of networking session as well. And there's free food, so it's just
free food, free drink.
Yes, it's just a win-win-win on so many different levels. And if anybody out there is in the Puget Sound area, and you want to, because we were talking earlier about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who are doing what you're doing or want to be doing. And if you're looking for an organization like that, you got to come out to the ISSA. Tell us, what do you have on the roadmap for the Puget Sound chapter? What's coming up? And yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking of a smart comeback for this last night, and I heard, Ford was stopping making cars. Or have you heard that they're going to stop making sedans?
No, I didn't hear that.
And you hear all these companies doing new things and leaving old things behind. I thought, looking in the future, 50 years from now, I'm thinking ISSA should get into personal transportation like hovercrafts or personal transportation. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
But the ISSA,
you're a visionary, Justin.
It's a vision. I was thinking of all the other visionaries and what they're thinking in the future. I think in the next 4 years, and I also look at the last 4 years as I'm thinking about what's next for ISSA Puget Sound. We've been growing tremendously in the last 2 years. I think the turnout is, almost doubling in some cases. We're in a bigger room now. We had a tiny little room before, and now we've doubled the size of space we need. So I think in the future what we'll have is more formalized programs for, like you said, people that are looking for jobs, for instance. What we need to be having is job workshops, teach people how to not necessarily write their resume, but just do a little check over, and also teach them how to get out there in front of people and get the jobs that they want. Maybe look at their LinkedIn profiles, just workshops like that, how to get them in the best space to where they can get a job. Not everybody in this world is a real go-getter and out in your face, and they tend to get a little shy or whatever when they're trying to find a job or seeking their next step. And so I think that's one thing we're going to do. The other thing is having more formalized programs for college students. We need to be out on the college campuses with a card table and a megaphone, yelling at everybody we can to get them engaged in cybersecurity and interested, or the ones that are already interested, get them thinking about coming to ISSA and solidifying a job in the job market for them in the future. And I think about other things too, like military transitioning programs. We already do that kind of unofficially with ISSA, but we need to be doing that more and working with the Army bases and all these people, helping them transition. There's a lot of people in the military that have cybersecurity experience, and then when they leave the military, they end up getting into construction or other things because they don't know how to turn that into a job. So not that there's anything wrong with construction, but you've got somebody with 10 years of experience in cybersecurity, but they don't know how to transition. We need to help them with that. So I see that. And the last thing I really see is a big regional event where there are draws of 300 to 400 people. So we're looking at that in the future. We have that with other ISSA chapters in other areas, like Los Angeles and Denver have a huge event every year where they have 300, 400, 500 people that show up. We'd like to also do that.
That's all sounds awesome. And now I'm not being sarcastic or joking, but you are a visionary. I mean, I really like the vision. In fact, I mean, while you're sitting there talking, you're explaining that, I'm thinking, you know what? I've got a son who's at the University of Washington studying informatics. He has one foot on the computer science path as well. And I'm like, why isn't he at these meetings? And why doesn't he bring some of his friends? And in fact, it's going to happen because I'm learning, and I'm sure he'll learn. It's the benefit of the network, the information, and then picking up some of those skills. If you were to do some of those the workshops that you're talking about or formalized learning opportunities, I think it's a massive benefit, massive. So, speaking about job opportunities, the statistics that I see in terms of the potential new jobs coming online for security professionals is far outgrowing the actual talent pool. What are your thoughts around opportunities in this space? The discrepancy between the needs of the industry versus our current talent pool, and then your advice for people who would want to get into the security industry.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy right now because just throwing it out there right off the bat, there's not enough people. And you hear that it's, there's not enough people for cybersecurity. And it sounds so cliche, but I know firsthand because I've been part of a team that had to hire people. So I helped an organization start their security practice. And, the first thing we have to do is work with the recruiters to start getting cybersecurity people. And I thought this is going to be easy, especially since I know a lot of people. It was not easy at all. If you have 3 roles that you need to fill, it was not uncommon to have maybe only 6 people reply or 4 reply. And so you kind of got to take what you can get in some cases. You're not necessarily getting the best candidate, or you get lucky and you are getting the best candidate, but you don't have like 100 people to choose from. Most of the people we talked to when we were recruiting, they're already hired. They're already paid well. They're not going to leave unless you're A, going to pay them more, or B, going to provide them a better work-to-life balance or whatever. But yeah, there's a shortage of people, and I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about your own children, is how do we steer them into cybersecurity? Because if we look at the next 20 years, this career is not going away and this need is not going away. How do we supply and how do we get the next generation into this career? And so, yeah, I would agree with you. There's not enough people to fill all the jobs.
And then what about people? Okay, let's look at two groups of people. Okay, we've got the university students, and then we have people more like myself, mid-career professionals who want to make a pivot into cybersecurity. For both of those groups of people, what would your advice be?
Yeah, the pivot thing is tricky. What I tell people to do, and what we will be telling people to do once we start this educational and career workshop this coming next couple months, is look at everything on your resume. Let's say the mid-career person. We'll start with that. Look at everything in your past that's been cybersecurity related, because you'll find little nooks and crannies in there where you do have some. Bring those to the surface. So let's say you were a help desk person at one point. A lot of people in help desk don't realize that 25% of their job was fixing computers that had viruses or troubleshooting malware infestation or whatever. So highlight that. If you were working in database development and you worked with the cybersecurity team to secure that database or that code that you were coding, you have experience in hardening software and securing it. So bring those things to light to help you pivot. You can do other things like go get education and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, it's real world experience that recruiters and hiring managers are looking for. For college, it's even more tricky because you've never proven that you can do the job. And that's the biggest roadblock right there. So I think what you need to, if there's any jobs on campus where you can get involved and be an intern or something like that, transition to an intern program and then that's an easier way into your career. But the hardest thing is getting that cold start, that pivot. That's the toughest thing.
Okay, so that's really excellent advice. In fact, I'm gonna have my son listen to that portion of this podcast, definitely, if not the entire thing. What are your thoughts on credentials, industry credentials? How important are they? What role do they play?
So I'll tell you, everybody has their opinion on industry credentials, and what I'm going to say might make people perplexed, but I don't want anybody to take it the wrong way. I at the end of the day, if I'm a CISO and I'm hiring people, I'm going to look for the credentials, but it's not going to rule anybody out. The credentials to me at a executive manager level are going to be, can the person do the job? If I have an intrusion detection team of 20 people and I need 3 more people, I'm not going to be looking for a CISSP certification. I'm going to be looking to see if that person can actually do the job. Do they fit culturally with the team? That kind of thing. The certifications are great. If you want to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to get a certification and you have that luxury to do it, by all means do it. It's only going to help you. It's going to help you get the knowledge for the job. But at the end of the day, you can go study the CISSP or any other certification on your own time and get the same head knowledge. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to do the job.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and it's like you said, if there's 2 people and they have equal skills, one of them has a certification, maybe they'll get the nod, but really it comes down to the experience, and are you able to demonstrate that? We don't have too much more time here, but let me ask you, going forward, what are the areas that are most interesting or the fastest growing in the cybersecurity industry?
Yeah, it's funny for me because every couple of years you hear some new moniker of, this is the thing. But I got to just go back to reality. The most interesting thing on the horizon is whatever's most interesting for your organization, the place that you're working or the customers that you're serving. So it's great to be aware of what the new big thing is, like AI and big data and things like that. But if you're never going to be exposed to big data or AI in your organization, you need to focus on what your organization does. So back to what we were talking about what the business processes are, what your organization does. Focus on the crown jewels at your organization. Always know what that is, and that's the best advice that I have for you. I will say just real quick, I will give a big nod to big data is on the horizon. It's here now. AI is the same way. Cybersecurity professionals need to learn how to protect that data, just like any other data. And also, AI is going to be a big helper with cybersecurity in the future for things like intrusion detection. Use the AI to improve information security products and techniques.
Right. It's funny. I'll have 2 comments there. One is I'm working with one organization, and we've had these very high-level meetings to talk about what's our AI play. How are we going to use AI? And, part of me is thinking like, well, there is no AI play for us because, the way this business is set up, there's no real application for AI. But it's kind of like people feel like, but we have to have a way that we, are going to work with this.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then to the other point, we see a lot of work, like the work we do with Microsoft. AI plays a huge role in anomaly detection, for example, and what people are doing on the network. And wow, Mark's never gone over to these files and downloaded that volume of them from this position. So hey, you know what? There's a little bit of an anomaly here. Maybe we need to flag this. And in a small organization, maybe you can do that manually, but you cannot scale using just doing it manually. You need to use some type of machine learning. So
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be great is the AI helping people do their job now, or helping identify new threats and anomalies, like you said. That's where it's going to really help cybersecurity. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, just a couple more things, and then we'll wrap this up. Tell us or share, if you don't mind, a interesting story that's that you've recently come across in the cybersecurity space. And just to kind of tee you up, and give you a second to think about that. I just got a call last night from a friend who was, I guess, the target of a very interesting spearphishing campaign. And this wasn't even online. This was actually that person received a letter at home with no return address. And the letter basically said, we have uncovered some of your misadventures in the area, and they dropped in the names of where the person lived, where they worked, and they said, if you want to keep these misadventures quiet and not let your neighbors or wife find out about these, you're going to have to send X amount of money via Bitcoin to us, right? And if you don't, we will not only inform your wife, but we'll inform all your neighbors. And so I took that information and I actually went online, and actually it was Krebs reported on this back in January, word for word. But I was thinking, wow, man, I mean, if you get a letter at home and you send that, if you send that letter out to 1,000 people, there's going to be a percentage of them who've had these quote unquote misadventures, right? They're like, oh man, who's been watching me, right? And I was like, because sometimes we think about cybersecurity or security, we're really focused on, our emails or our IT infrastructure, but this is old school, man.
No, that is really funny because you're right. They use that social engineering aspect to show, okay, 9 out of 10 things most humans do.
Right.
So we're gonna hit on a couple of them, and the person's gonna believe it, and they might look at two of them and go, okay, that's an out and out lie. I did not do that. So they buy into it.
Yeah.
But as far as stories go, I mean, I don't have any like stories recently that I can remember besides just what I'm doing at work and day to day. But I can tell you that the spear-phishing and that type of attack is what's happening. This is, if you look at every single one of them, the ransomware attacks and all these things, it requires human interaction. Mm-hmm. And so I think the big story is that we need to do a better job training people. And I look at it, gosh, every month it's a new spear-phishing attack or new human interaction that caused a major problem at an organization. And I keep asking, when are people going to stop clicking or signing into this stuff or following for these emails? And people they need to understand and resist the urge to click. The problem is some of the stuff looks so real. Some of it looks like they're managers. So the attackers are getting smarter and doing a little reconnaissance on who works at the company, looking at the company's org chart, and then going, oh, I can see that so-and-so reports to so-and-so. So I'll just make the email look like it comes from that person. And then it's almost impossible to distinguish reality from an attack.
I got an email from using the CEO. So I work with a variety of organizations. It had the CEO's name, first name dot last name at, and then it was some Gmail or something, right? But I just saw first name dot last name, and I was like, oh. And the email said, hey, Mark, I need to talk to you in about 5 minutes. And I was like, sure, what's up, and then the next email came back and said, well, the situation is we need you to transfer some money because our European bank account is shut right now. And right there, I was like, well, there's a flag, right? And so then, of course, I forwarded it to the real CEO, and they're like, that's not us, man. But it's like, you imagine, everybody's multitasking, everybody's running 110 miles per hour, and you see that person's name, and all of a sudden, your adrenaline spikes, and you're like, oh, I got to take care of this right now. And again, you send that out to 100 people, all it takes is one or two to fall for it, right?
Yeah, you're sparking my memory now. I did have a quick story that happened this year, and it is regarding just that. So, and the funny part is, I'll tell you in a minute. I get this call from somebody, and they're like, I know this business owner down in Seattle. She's a business magnate in the area, and she had $1.7 million taken from her via the same type of thing that you just said. She got scammed. They had her bank account information. They faked like they were the bank manager and everything, and they said the company needs this money. Well, they knew she was out of town. She was on a cruise ship. So what they did was while she was on this cruise ship, they knew the second in command could authorize the money. So the second in command authorized the money and did the bank transfer. It looks so real when I heard the story. Everything that happened, I'm like, I would have probably done the same thing. The second in command of the money. Well, they were going to hire me to do this huge project. I gave them a quote, and she comes back and says, this is only $76,000 that I lost, right? And the figure I was given was 1.7600, million.
Right.
And I go, oh my gosh, you only lost 76 million. I probably would have just told you to just suck it up, It's not going to be cost effective to pay somebody like me to come in and try to get $76,000 back.
Right.
So it was a wash.
Wow. So and that was just social engineering, right? I mean, they're just playing around.
It was incredible. We think that when she was on this cruise line, they had connected to a insecure Wi-Fi access point.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody did some kind of man in the middle and were able to read what she was sending back and forth to her company while she was working.
Wow.
And that's the only thing we could think of, because the email that was sent to her was traced back to some European country. So we're able to trace it back. But it was genius. They knew everything, and they knew how the authorization worked. They even called the bank manager. So what happened was somebody actually went to Oregon, pulled the money out of the bank. They just showed up and said, we're here to pick up the money for the money transfer. And they walked out of the bank with $76,000 in Oregon.
Wow.
It was incredible.
Makes me nervous to even just check my email or my snail mail, man. It's like, I just don't want to know, man. Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, hey, okay. Last thing here. What's next for you and for the ISSA? What should people be looking for? Upcoming events.
Next? Yeah. Next month we have, or actually, it's not next month yet. Losing track of time. Next month we have Bar Lockwood. She's going to speak, and I don't have her information up in front of me right now, but she's a longtime member of the organization. I've personally worked with her at Microsoft on the information security teams, and she's wonderful. You got to come this month. She's just a wonderful speaker. She's going to be great. And then ISSA members should look out for the invites coming up about the workshops, the career workshops, and other opportunities like that. So that's what's coming up for ISSA. We're planning a quarterly event. So within the next couple months, you'll see something coming up for a summer event. And that's something that you want to be in tune to. That's going to be fun. We'll have a big barbecue down at a beach somewhere, Something like that. It's going to be a blast. Excellent.
And just a reminder for everybody, it's the chapter meetings are the third Thursday of every month. They kick off at 6:30, and they're usually at the Mercer Island Community Center. It's a great venue. I mean, I just like going out there regardless of if there's a meeting or not, because it's just such a nice setting, especially this last meeting because we had beautiful weather and everything. So I encourage everybody to come out and join, participate. Justin, really appreciate you taking the time to join the show here. Really appreciate the work that you do with the ISSA. I know that myself, Hiram, and the rest of the AdeQuest team really benefit from it, and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And hey, thanks for being the speakers this month.
It was great.
Nod to you guys. AdeQuest has supported the chapter, and Hiram spoke this month, and it was well attended during an RSA event. So thank you. Thank you guys.
Excellent. Okay. Well, take care, everybody, and stay safe. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Welcome to Secure Talk, your trusted source of information on the latest threats, trends, tools, and technology related to cybersecurity and compliance. Join our hosts as they discuss a wide range of topics and speak with leading cybersecurity, technology, and compliance experts. Now is the time for Secure Talk.